Hello. Hello. Testing. Hello. 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 No, it's this one. Yes. Good evening, everyone. We are just about to start. Welcome everyone who made it this evening, the last evening of Search 2018. Can I request those of us who are a little bit at the back just to come closer? If you don't mind, we will appreciate you just coming closer. Dr. Pandit always wants to see those he's speaking to. Thank you very much for cooperating. Tonight, the session is about the Supreme transaction. And just want to see, some of us were here when this all started, and we had an MC, Mr. Hlope, who's seated here. Can all of us see him? Can we just wave your hand as we recognize you? Thank you very much. Yes, let's give him a round of applause. He would normally say good morning, and by so he wanted our brains to be fresh for the morning. So that's how we operate in this house. Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Thank you. Before I take much of your time, we want to welcome Dr. Pandit, who's here. Let's give him a round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. We are therefore going to start the session. We don't want to waste more time because there's going to be a few things that are going to happen right after he's done. And therefore, Dr. Pandit, over to you.
Thank you. Mic testing, check. Mic testing, check. Is that okay at the back? Yeah. Oops. Okay, we're ready to begin our last session together. Good evening. It's my joy and pleasure to be with you all. I thank the organizers very much who contacted me all this distance to the United States and brought me here, organized this, paid for it, and I owe them a debt of gratitude. I owe a gratitude to you too, who have come out every evening to hear and to digest and to figure out what we are trying to do and learn something new, I hope, every evening. Let's just recap what we have been doing. The first evening we said that we are on an intellectual journey, a journey in which we are going to use our minds. We'll put on the thinking cap and we will do critical thinking. And what is critical thinking? We don't blindly swallow, we do not summarily dismiss, but we honestly inquire. Why? Because if we don't do that, we will not know which attitude we are bringing to the table at any given time, because we have three attitudes in our minds: the attitude of a believer, of a skeptic, of an inquirer. And we can inquire as a skeptic and we can inquire as a believer, but that's not really true inquiry. What we want us to be, not just during these sessions, but in life, a neutral inquirer. Whenever we are faced with a report, we look at it impartially and carefully. So to create an atmosphere of neutral inquiry, we say we need four things: humbleness, humility, honesty, calmness, and respect. Once we do that, then we've qualified ourselves to be inquirers. And when we actually do the inquiry, especially if it's a controversial topic, Then we put both topics in front of us, stand in the middle, and look at both, for both and against both. That makes 4 columns of arguments, which I call the pan process. So the first evening, the big controversial question was, is there a God in existence? How can a rational thinking, scientific mind accept that? But when we did our pan process, this is what our conclusion was that evening. Based on evidence and reasonable, logical thinking, the existence of the supernatural is valid and makes the better sense. Therefore, the existence of God is a rational, credible claim. The second evening, we looked at the theory of evolution. And our proposition was, if the theory of evolution is scientific, then there might be a question whether we need God at all, because natural selection would do the whole trick. And all that we see in the universe today would have come from natural selection by itself, spontaneously. Whereas if the theory of evolution is not scientific, then we need something to explain what we have in the universe. And when we looked at it carefully, we found that a theory of evolution is really not scientific. It doesn't answer to the criteria of science. So the second proposition is the more reasonable based on the scientific information in our hands today. And that proposition was, if the theory of evolution is not scientific, then nature and the study of natural sciences could endorse the claim that God does in fact exist. And the way we were premising it, the principle involved was we must go where the argument leads. The third evening we said, we talked about relativism, which claims that all statements are only relatively true, but we found it to be a self-defeating proposal, because the moment you say all statements, you've made an absolute truth out of it. Statements then can be factual. They don't have to be just relatively true. Pluralism, which says that all the religions are basically the same, equally valid. We didn't find them in the religious writings. Each religion claims to be the only way. When there's more than one saying that, it leads to a logical deduction that there is only one claim that is truly the only way. And so we wanted to focus on that and see if we could identify that and at least reach that. We expressed our inability to compare the doctrines, the tenets of beliefs, and the philosophies of these different religions. So in my search, I turned around from the doctrines to what I call the para-religious factors. Factors that are not actually what the believers are dealing with, but that which was the story from which the doctrines came out. We said we were looking for the red marble. And to look for the red marble, I was going to ask 10 questions, 3 to the writings and 7 to the flesh and blood founders of the religions. And all I would do was ask, get the answers, and place it on the table and see what happens. So we are now looking for the red marble. Question 1, how do we classify that writing of this particular religion? And we were looking at 5 great world religions: Hinduism, Islam, Judaism, Buddhism, and Christianity. Now, the first question that we asked was very important. And the question was, what kind of literature is that writing? And we described the 4 types of writing that are in ancient writings, in ancient literature. Folktale, legend, myth, and historical. And we described each of them and compared the writings. And when we did that, we found that the New Testament is the best attested historical piece of literature in the world compared to any other writing, not just religious writing, any other writing. So that was question 1. Question 2, did the writing itself tell us how to test it? And we found that the Judeo-Christian scripture is the only one that spells out a test for its authenticity, and then it fulfills its own test in a clear and unambiguous way. And the test was predictive prophecy. Can you say what will happen before it happens, and then find out whether it really happened? Number 3 was a top feature And our conclusion was that all the top features are amazing, highly impressive. They all get high, excellent marks. And so there was no red marble in that study. So 3 questions to the writings done. Now we turn to the founders. The first question to the founders is, what is the highest claim you make for yourself? Because I am going to lean on you. I'm going to trust you. I'm going to place many of my decisions on what you say. So can you tell me what is the highest claim you make for yourself? And we found of all the founders and the authors of the Hindu religion, Jesus made the highest claim of all the founders. He claimed to be God. He did not fit into any category of humans who call themselves God. That's what we did, we studied. Are there humans who call themselves God? Of course. So if Jesus now fits into one of those, then we can say, hey, maybe he's not God. But he did not fit into any of those. And so we left him in that position as a possibility. Question 2 to the founders. How do you describe your message and mission? And we found that all the founders actually were pretty confident about their message and their mission. And they stated it. But Jesus is the only one who used the word I am. All the other founders claimed to bring a message to the human race. Jesus claimed to be the message. An example, Gautama Buddha said that he was enlightened, and so he will teach the human race how to be enlightened. Jesus said, I am the light. Gautama Buddha had to search for 6 years for light, from the age of 29 to the age of 35, looking for light, so that he could say he's enlightened. Jesus didn't have to look anywhere for light. He just said, I am the light. And the one who is the light doesn't have to look for it. He claimed, his claims seemed to set him apart very clearly. Then the next one was what I call the real acid test. How did your life compare with your own teachings? And in the study of life versus teachings of the founders, the one unblemished life was that of Jesus. His life fully matched the teachings and gave only him the right to say, follow me. Because anybody else calling you to follow them, they had already fallen. So if you're going to follow them, you'll also fall. This is the one man who can honestly and clearly say, follow me, because he never fell. And that we saw right across, not only from Christian literature, but from non-Christian literatures as well. At that point, I said I was getting a little uneasy because everything seemed to be pointing in one direction. And as an inquirer, when everything is pointing in one direction, you red flags. Am I pushing it there, or is some other factor which is not really a true inquiry doing that? And so I specifically looked for studies in which this man would not come out first. And the next 3 were just those.